location. And Judge Yoder, who I see is first on the agenda with the welcome. I'm thinking that I may have been impeached as Chief Judge. So I wasn't here this morning, and so I'm wondering what took place.
Well, I just wanted to make sure he got an opportunity to do something.
Okay. We'll make sure we call him when he shows up. Just before we get to Sarah and kind of the heart of the program, first of all, welcome to the Juvenile Justice Committee members who are here. I think what we're doing with the CJCC dovetails nicely into what the JJ whatever the acronym is. I think that it'll be helpful for everybody to hear that information, especially Dr. Beck and Sarah's research. It was eye-opening to me, even after having doing it for quite some time, and very helpful in terms of what we're trying to do at this point in time with some of the juveniles who are coming to court and some of the research that we're finding and the information that they're giving to us, and we'll explain that here a little bit. But before we get started with that, I'll skip ahead with the agenda a little bit. First of all, with regard to the Pretrial Fairness Act, I know that's probably on everybody's mind with everything, especially I see Mr. Regan nodding in the back there, and the state's attorney office. But however you feel about it, perfectly fine. That's not an issue. It's here, and starting September, it's going to be in place. The good thing about it is Chief Judge Yoder, I see where you have the welcome.
I have the welcome?
Yeah, that's usually the Chief Judge's spot, so I feel like I've been impeached. But the PFA, it wasn't a surprise, the Supreme Court's opinion that came down. We were fairly expecting that that's the way they may come down on things. What we were looking for was the time frame, so it wasn't an immediate implementation to where we did have a little time to dust everything off that we had done before and be ready for things. And before we got started, before the stay happened by the court, we were only 3 days from implementation at that point in time. So we were ready as we possibly could be. We have forms ready, we have a specific docket ready that Judge Cording's going to handle. We had done test run-throughs, and we felt we were as prepared as could be before the Supreme Court stayed everything. So we need to just dust things off. We have 60 days to do it. We will, and we will be ready to go with things. The state's attorney's office is a little short-staffed at this point in time, but we're going to work with them to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity to go ahead and present things at those hearings. And so we'll work things out. Is it going to go smooth? Probably not. There'll be a few bumps in the road, but we're as ready as we can be. I cannot think of anything. We've met with the justice partners for months before this ever rolled out. We started meeting in August every other week with presentations with how we're going to do this from the time of arrest up until the time of release and up until the time of trial. So we ran through all the scenarios, and I'm highly confident that after we get our ducks back in a row, we're going to be all set to go. So that's where we're at with that. The next thing is last week, Mary Cole, who was one of the assistants in the state's attorney's office, handled a lot of higher profile cases. She was sworn in as an associate circuit judge, so that leaves the state's attorney's office a big hole there, and Eric can talk about that, or Brad if they choose to do so, but they're working on filling some gaps in their office at this point in time. Mary's going to sit in Pontiac, and so she actually was sworn in on Friday, took the bench on Monday, and started hearing cases. So funny story about her on Sunday, if you're interested. I'm sure somebody can tell it a whole lot better. Mr. Regan or Eric can certainly tell about a whole lot better. kind of a bumpy start for her. Also some sad news, Dave Rumley, who a lot of you might have had contact with over the years. He was here in McLean County for quite a while, and then recently was the Logan County Public Defender, unexpectedly passed away last week. And so one of their former public defenders, Tim Timoney, has agreed to step in and be the interim public defender while we fill some gaps there and go through the application process. So that is in the works at this point in time as well. Kind of brings us to more of the heart of the program. And again, I feel like a broken record sometimes when I stand up here telling everybody what we're trying to do with the CJCC, with the executive committee, but I'm going to go through it just a little bit again. Back in 2018, when we had such a violent year with gun violence, with most of that gun violence involved youth, where we saw a number of murders here in the community, we started pivoting away from the jail issues. We still keep an eye on the jail issues, but we had all of the justice partners in one room when we started looking at what can we go ahead and do when we have the decision makers in one room to go ahead and step in and do whatever we can to either prevent or to mitigate whatever's going on in the community in this regard. And so we started looking at where was the problem? What programs are in place to address the problem? And we started bringing in agencies that have contact with youth in our community, with what Suzanne might term as emerging adults, 18 to 26-year-olds. What can we do? What programs are available for those folks? And what can we do to go ahead and assist those programs? So we're making sure that we're doing everything we possibly can do to prevent another year like 2018. And we started bringing in people like Andrew Held, Andre Hersey, and different foundations to go ahead and talk to us to say, here's what we're doing out in the community, here's what we're trying to do. So the justice partners were all informed in terms of here are the programs available to us. Let's see what's working, let's see what's not working. And then we asked Dr. Beck and Sarah to go ahead and start studying these areas to say, what is working? How can we go ahead and make a difference in this group? And that got away a little bit from the gun violence, and we started looking at, okay, how about the kids who were in juvenile detention and did not go to the adult level, was not incarcerated in the adult detention facility. What happened with those folks that made a difference? And so we asked Dr. Beck and Sarah to go ahead and contact as many people as they could get hold of and start talking with them and interviewing them. There was a set of questions and probation work with them to go ahead and say, contact these folks and see what worked, see what didn't work. And they have had some success in terms of talking with some people, and they have compiled some things, some interview results from that. And what we hope to do with that information is not just put it on a shelf somewhere, but we hope to use that information to go ahead and start saying, this works, where this made a difference in this youth's life, so we can educate the judges on that and probation on that and say, this is what's working out there, let's go ahead and build that up. And we're already trying to do that in the courtroom that I have at this point in time. I have a juvenile delinquency docket at this point in time, and we're already starting to go ahead and take certain individuals that we feel a mentorship program, and we've tried mentorships in the programs in the past that haven't worked, but we're trying to go ahead and say, what did work with a mentor? And they've answered some of those questions for me, and we're actually, I think at this point in time, 4 or 5 kids that we've actually put some people with, and hopefully making some differences. And so Suzanne might have an update on one of our programs as well after Dr. Beck is done. And thank you to Dr. Beck for actually being here because he was supposed to be in Canada and got sidetracked. And so
I'll get there eventually.
Get there eventually. This is only try number 4.
No.
family. So try number 4, they say, what, 5th time's the charm?
5th time's the charm.
Okay, and happy birthday to the sheriff. I won't say too much. Happy birthday. Okay, so Sarah, you want to go ahead and take the stage here?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that introduction, because you mostly covered the first slide here, really, which is just explaining why we even are doing this, or what the whole point was, being that there is a huge chunk of people who are going to juvenile detentions, and this is specifically in McLean County. I mean, we obviously only have information relating to McLean County. So people that are going to JDC multiple times and then never seeing the inside of this adult detention. And then it gets even weirder when you've got people who are going 3, 4, 5 times to juvenile detention and just never see the inside. So our whole goal was to ask, what's working? So the current demographics of these people today, as they stand today, and there were 4 that we interviewed. The most important things to note here is that they all have children, and most are single parents. Almost all have jobs outside the home. The only one that doesn't is a stay-at-home parent. And a good chunk graduated from high school, one did not. But all that graduated from high school did then go on to some kind of trade school or secondary school, but nobody finished. So the demographic, this is kind of what their lives looked like. I'll come over on this side. This is kind of what their lives looked like at the time. So when they were in juvenile detention, when they were in juvenile probation. Important to note here, we didn't see a lot of extracurricular involvement. We didn't see a lot of, having jobs. A lot of them were too young. So, started 11, 12, 13, 14. All lived with a single mom, and dad was out of the picture or very slightly in the picture. Everybody had multiple biological siblings, and also, not everybody, everybody had multiple siblings, be it biological, be it foster, be it step. And pretty much everybody lived with multiple siblings at one point or another. There was a lot of inconsistent housing during this time. Almost all had a notably bad relationship with mom at the time, and this was not a question we specifically asked, but this is something they offered up. And so what's interesting is we heard a lot of critique about mom. It was very common to hear, mom was too strict, mom wasn't strict enough, mom worked too much, mom had her own problems going on. Almost nobody mentioned dad, criticized dad, unless we specifically asked, even though dad wasn't around or didn't exist in those cases. So at that time as well, a good chunk, and truly all, had some kind of older influence, older connection to adult facility, juvenile facility, probation, what have you, be it parents, be it friends, be it siblings, or romantic partners, older romantic partners. So friends and romantic partners were kind of a bigger one. Only half had parents that seemed invested, or at least they felt were invested in changing their behavior or helping them once they got out. So that's, going to all their court dates, picking them up, saying, yes, judge, I'll do what you tell me to do. I want my kid to get straight. The charge types, it's not like these kids were necessarily, and I say kids, they're not kids anymore. It's not like these people were necessarily getting caught with a can of spray paint 3, 4 times. I mean, it was, in some cases, heavy stuff. So even more interesting that these people would never see the inside of an adult facility. So the important part, the exciting part, services that were helpful. So there were some conflicting reports on community service and these counselors and therapists that they had while in JDC, so they're actually booked. Some people felt community service was helpful, some felt it was a waste of time, some felt that the counselors were great and like the reason they got out and super, listened to them and cared about them. And other people felt the counselors couldn't relate to them, and the feeling there was, you're paid to be here, you're paid to listen to me and 100 other kids like me, what do you know about my life? It seemed that across the board, there was a lot of appreciation for school. So academics in JDC, getting to get out of your room, getting to have a little change of pace, getting to keep up with your peers and not feel, there was a sense of embarrassment in a lot of these cases, or a sense of feeling like you didn't get to have what you deserved, maybe. And so getting to go to school while in JDC made everybody kind of feel like they were still a person. Girls moving on, which I think Suzanne knows a little bit more about this than I do. I don't know, we don't do this anymore, right? It's not a service that is offered anymore.
Right, it's no longer in existence. Girls Moving On was a cognitive behavioral program that we offered through court services. I wish I had the time frame. At one time, we had a gender-specific caseload in juvenile, which we've kind of transitioned back to that because our numbers are lower, but we had one officer that specifically had a female caseload, and she also ran the Girls Moving On group as part of the component to that probation order.
So we got some appreciation specifically for Girls Moving On, saying that was super helpful for me, and then other women that we interviewed, even though they didn't specifically mention Girls Moving On, I don't know that they had it offered to them, really appreciated having some kind of community with other women, be it having female peers in JDC, or having female staff members in JDC, or a female probation officer. They felt not so nervous, was kind of one of the words they used. And we'll get to this in a moment, but important to note that this person was never made to feel uncomfortable by a male staff member or male peer or anything. It was just a sense of, I'm in a place I've never been, I'm young, and to be around women felt a little more, could relate and feel a little more comfortable. Also, mental health services were very helpful for some people. They found that to be, and those were more tailored, those were more specific. So in this case, the inpatient, this person said, you know what, I did my time, I appreciate it, I learned some skills, I never want to go back. That was deterrent enough, you got me, I'm good. Extended day program was a big one, pretty much everybody liked that. And there was one person who pretty much said, not much. I just, at the time, didn't care. So maybe as an adult, I feel like certain things, in retrospect, were helpful. As an adolescent, none of these were helpful in my mind because I didn't care. So, in terms of JDC and probation staff, JDC staff, good remarks all across the board. They were always respectful and fair. Everybody found that physical safety was a very important, was a value over there. Everybody felt physically safe. And again, one of those things that we did not specifically ask, did you feel safe? And we said, how did you feel you were treated? Every single person said, my physical safety was #1 priority. I never felt in danger. Some people bonded with staff members, some didn't. This is one of those cases in which a female said female staff members super helpful because there's not a lot of other girls in JDC. There were general appreciations of probation and investments they made. There were a few critiques made, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the greatest positive impacts were seen when there was a focus on a larger goal, when there was a future, something to work towards, as opposed to, let's punish this behavior right now, let's deter this behavior, etc. The only negative remark that JDC staff received was the use of the term inmate was perceived to be just another iteration of bad kid, troublemaker, which when a 13, 14-year-old hears that, what these people reported feeling was, I might as well be. If everybody thinks I'm a bad kid, everybody thinks I'm a troublemaker, everybody thinks I'm an inmate, I'm not a person, I am these things, might as well keep coming back. So that was something, that was a critique that was made of JDC staff, and the only one, truly. And so we'll talk about the next one in a moment here. So when we asked them, what changes would you make? If you were in charge, what would you do? What would you change? Relatable mentors was a big one. Having people that felt not necessarily just like staff members or counselors who may have been very well equipped to help with whatever problems they had going on, they were still an authority figure that maybe had never experienced, or juveniles felt like they had not experienced the same things as them. Probation officers exercising patience. Patience was a word that came up a couple of times in viewing things from a juvenile's perspective. So an example of this would be, and this was an example given by somebody, saying, you know, there would be times when I would sleep in and I would be late for school and be marked truant, and my probation officer would show up and say, what's the deal? And they'd say, I was very lucky that I had a probation officer who did not just drag me in and cite me and I got in trouble again, who would notice that, you know, mom didn't pay electrical bill, or I was up late taking care of my siblings and that's why I slept in. And so they would come to the house and make sure I had breakfast and drive me to school. Or on days that I was truant, they would ask me why I was truant before citing me for being truant. And so it was, they said things like that made me feel like a person, made me feel like they knew what my goals were. They knew what the judge wanted me to do, which was be in school, not get in trouble. So they said it took some time to get used to having somebody tell me to do something I didn't want to do, which was get up and go to school. I was tired. But they appreciated it in the long run. They said I started to feel like a person. And then avoiding these like generalized terms is something that they've cited. So when we ask these people, what helped you get where you are today? Why are you here and not in adult jail? JDC and probation were found overall to be very helpful, but specifically they said when I wanted to be helped. It wasn't all external. It's not like somebody, you know, intervened and that's the only reason I'm here. I had to at some point say, yes, I will accept your helping hand. Some people did have intervention. It says only one person from teachers and involvement in after-school clubs. That is one person who said that was the biggest thing. The others did say that those things did help. None of these people hang out with the same crowd anymore, which is huge and expected that they wouldn't hang out with the same crowd. And every time we asked, they said, absolutely not before we finished the sentence. Like, all of these people were proud and happy to say that all my old friends, my siblings, are currently doing life or currently have, you know, a street a mile long that I don't have, and they're proud of that. Or maybe I'm the first sibling to go to like graduate high school or attend a college course, something like that. So that was cited by at least one person to say that was the biggest thing for me, was just to not hang out with my friends anymore. Which is hard. And some of these people said it was my siblings, my biological siblings. I had to stop hanging out with them. I had to stop returning their calls. This is my favorite part. When we asked, not what helped you, when. Can you pinpoint a time when you changed, when things changed for you? All of the women said, I turned my life around the day I got off probation or out of JC. I wanted my freedom. I wanted to go to prom. I wanted a job. I wanted a car. I didn't want to be embarrassed when my friends asked why I couldn't go out past 8 p.m. Women all said freedom. All of the men said the day my first child was born, which was when they were teenagers. They said I had responsibility. I had somebody who was looking up to me. I couldn't mess around anymore. I couldn't do whatever I wanted. I couldn't go out past 9 p.m. I had to take care of a kid. So that is something we did not expect to see. A lot of the stuff we did kind of expect to see, something we didn't. But it's something we didn't really expect to see necessarily. Even though all of these people had children relatively young. They're all in their 20s and have children. So all these people did have children in their late teens, early 20s. But only the men found that to be a reason to change. So the final comments from these interviewees when we said, okay, what else do you want to say? Imagine you're standing up here, you're talking to you guys. What do you want them to hear? For many, these arrests happened a long time ago. Some of them feel like I'm in a different stage of life. I want you to know that I'm a different person. It may not seem like it. I may act like a more grown-up version, but I understand that I am different than my past. So even though it does exist, that is my past, that things may happen to me in the future, that I may seem like, I don't have a full-time job, or I don't go to college, or whatever. That could happen to anybody who doesn't have a past like this. Activities like making holiday cards, going on field trips are probably moaned and groaned about at the time. Probably not everybody appreciates it, not everybody likes it, but in the long run they really do. A little inside secret. We were told, we do like it. We'll never tell you we like it, but we like it. And there was interest in mentorship that was expressed, saying, hey, I know that I've kind of moaned and groaned about you guys didn't give us good mentors, and I wish I had someone to relate to. It's only fair for me to offer. So we had an offer, which I believe is in the process of maybe going somewhere. You had talked about somebody wanted to be the mentor that they wish they had, which is already a really great example of this doing something, changing something. So, in sum, the biggest impacts that we saw, relatability, and not all of these critiques were critiques of, I wish I had this, I never had this. Some of these critiques were, one person had it and said, I noticed that this is something I had that not everybody had. I'm really lucky, this helps. So, relatability, support from people that are older, from people that may not be a biological parent, a biological sibling. Direct advice, people to relate to, mentors to say, hey, listen, I've been there, I've gotten in trouble, and look at me now. I'm a success story, I'm an adult, I have children, I have a job, I have whatever. If you feel like you can never have those things, that's not true. An encouragement of good behavior generally was seen as far better than punishment of bad behavior. Now, obviously, we've picked a very specific pool of people. These are the people that wanted to be helped, got out. So this is not to say probation's doing it wrong, and you guys are always punching people, and everybody hates it, and it's not working. That's not the truth. The truth is that people that want to be helped want to feel like they are receiving help. And so in some cases where maybe there is a future to be seen, where somebody thinks that they can change, this is what they want. JDC staff, great across the board, love them, big fan. They said along the way, everybody is very respectful of them generally. And not just JDC staff once you get in, staff of yours, staff of, people that they interact with in the getting arrested, getting booked process. And the biggest personal impact was stratified by gender, which we didn't expect. So responsibility for the men and freedom for the women. And I think that's it. If anybody has any clarifying questions, but this is because we thought Frank wasn't going to be here. Frank was supposed to be here. But Canada won't take him, so.
Question. I know that you are interested in emerging adult function, and with the type of recidivism that sometimes comes, or doesn't, as the case would be, do you plan to increase the sampling and continue with this study, just to see if, as you gather more clients to study, you're going to find there is some pattern emerging?
Yes.
Yes.
In answer to your question, actually, we addressed that at our last executive committee meeting. The sample size for the folks that we started off with were folks who were in JDC and didn't recidivate.
Right.
Now what we want to take a look at is those folks who did not go to JDC, had some sort of form of probation, and did not become an adult offender after that. What worked with those folks out in the community?
Right.
And so that's what our next step hopes to be with Dr. Beck. And Sarah's leaving, so won't be Sarah, but Dr. Beck and whoever he chooses to have.
Well, are you going to follow any of these people to see what becomes of them in the
How their lives change.
2 or 3 years and 4 years and so on? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that hadn't
That's a
come
good
up.
question.
That's a possibility. All these people were willing to talk to
Right.
us, and we have their contact information and can reach out again. They were told that they are anonymous. I mean, we're not sharing their names with you.
Sure.
But we can reach out to them and follow up. I think, I was in on these interviews, and I think they would all be willing to.
Well, it was a fascinating study, it's just limited in its sampling.
Yeah.
Very.
So let's be clear, we had 50 names of folks who had 3 or more bookings into the JDC and no bookings into the adult facility. And we have phone numbers from the past, and some of them aren't working, and then we had a bunch of non-response. I mean, when folks who are in this situation get a call from the county.
We had a lot of, yes, we had a lot of people who were not
Answer.
happy to hear from us. So,
I was particularly interested in the fact that some of these men feel their lives turn around when they had their first child. Because some of those guys evidently didn't have fathers that were much of a part of their lives as they were growing up. And I find that very interesting. You know, I don't quite know what it means, but it's kind of an interesting thing to pursue.
they had even mentioned it outright to say, I have a child, I have a responsibility. I never had a dad who cared about me.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to be better than my dad. One said specifically, I want my daughter to be proud of me the way I was never proud of my father.
Interesting.
So,
Thank you.
Other questions for Sarah? A couple more things just to add on to Sarah is that it was mentioned with regard, well, I first should start off by saying this, that I think it's important to remember that the purpose of the juvenile justice system is rehabilitation. It is not punitive, as in the adult system. And the legislature has set that out, that it's rehabilitative as opposed to any type of punitive action that you are taking against these youth. And so that's why we're focusing on what works here into rehabilitating, as opposed to any type of saying, well, why don't we go send them all to JJC? No, that's not the answer. At least what we're tasked with. Do some people need to go? Yes, they do. But we're looking to rehabilitate. And so with that goal in mind, that's kind of where we're going with this study. I asked all of the youth who were before me in court, what's your goal? What do you hope to do? And I have yet to receive an answer, which is very sad in terms of no direction, look for today. And that's one area that hopefully probation can help, or a mentor might be able to help, is to go ahead and give them some direction, give them a pathway. And so that's one of the things that we hope to do. Another thing that resulted from Sarah's and Dr. Beck's study was, you might have recalled in Chicago a few months back, I was up there at the time when all the kids started kind of rioting in the streets and turning the cars over, that type of thing. And the mayor came out, the new mayor came out and said, we need to give these kids something to do. And people just were outraged that would be his response to what happened. I think the citizens wanted these kids locked up. But in essence, he was right. Maybe his message wasn't exactly at the right time, but their studies has shown once we give these kids something to do, once we can possibly send them to camps, get them away from the kids they were running with that helped them get into trouble in the first place. Once we can start doing those types of things, that has a positive impact upon recidivism from going to a youthful offender to an adult offender. And Suzanne and I have talked about some grants that may be available, that we may be able to use some money to go ahead and send some kids to camp, to go ahead and get them involved in different things. And so that may be in the works. The final thing was mental health services. And that is, since taking over the juvenile docket, that is by far the most frustrating thing, quite frankly, that I've seen since I've been as a judge, in the 17 years that I've been a judge here. There are better services available for adults in mental health areas than there are for kids. I have kids before me, and that's not to say much, because there's not much out there for adults. But I had a kid in front of me, and the kid obviously had some mental health issues that was creating problem after problem. And we kept searching for a facility to go ahead and take this kid, and there was nothing available. Once we finally found something, they called us the day before admit and said, no, we've reconsidered, there's some violence in this kid's background, and so we're not gonna go ahead and take this kid. We had nowhere to send it, nowhere to send the kid, and still don't. We're still looking for a place. And it's incredibly frustrating, the mental health aspect, because most of the kids who do come before the court do have some mental health issues, just like adults. So those are just a couple of things. Where we hope to go with things and what we're starting to look so we can go ahead and start to put some of this in action is potentially looking at possibly a mentorship type program and starting to get some of the folks in place to maybe probation's too close, the court's too close, treatment providers are too close to these kids where they're paid, as was indicated on the research, to say, you're not going to tell me anything, it's your job to do this. And so our hope is to go ahead and find some folks to where we can go ahead and start putting folks in place where these kids can actually talk to about common experiences, similar to what an AA or NA type situation is, where you might have a sponsor in those programs, where you can call up, there's some accountability, but we have to be real careful with regard to putting somebody with the youth. We're not going to go ahead and just ship those two off, but maybe in a controlled environment to go ahead and have somebody that they might be able to talk to, somebody who might be able to hold them accountable that isn't in a paid position or a position to where youth feels like they're just being forced to be there. The second thing is, one of the things that came out of the research is we looked a few years back, there was a mentorship program, I think 100 Black Men, Suzanne, had a mentorship program where they were going ahead and stepping in. And what the youth said, it didn't necessarily take off. And what the youth were saying to us is that there's too much of a gap here. Those folks, yeah, they've made real successes of themselves, but they didn't have the common experience that we had as a youth where they were, where we were. And so that was a big enough gap to where they weren't gelling together. And so what we're looking at is people who have been through the system, stepping in and maybe helping us out. People, maybe we've even thrown it out there again, have to be real careful, and it's just in the looking stages. What about potential drug court graduates who have been through the substance areas, who might be able to step in and give some common experiences? And again, everything would be in a controlled environment should we go ahead and do something like that. But that's what kind of the hope is to what the future plans might be in terms of looking at some things where we can use this information to actually put it to use. So I'll be glad to take any questions. No questions. Suzanne has talked with somebody in the community who we did have at the CJCC to explain what their program was about 2 years ago. And this person has helped us out with a couple of different things. So Suzanne, do you want to update us on that?
Sure. So a couple things. I'll give a brief update if you'd like me to on JJC.
Sure.
This, like I said, will be brief. I think 2 or 3 chair people back. JJC's summer initiative is always the summer jobs program, so we run that through Youth Build. So there's a commitment from the City of Bloomington, Town and Normal, Regional Office of Education, McLean County Sheriff, and the State's Attorney's Office. So them as a collective come together and they sponsor that program. As I stated, Youth Build is the agency that runs the summer jobs program. In conjunction with JJC, it runs through, what started on May 30th and it will run through August 4th. A lot of that is just geared towards work skills, job readiness. They do get certifications in certain fields like food prep, office and computer skills, childcare, and other areas. And then they do a lot of field trips with the kids. So we do refer youth through juvenile probation to that, and then there's also some youth from the community that are also referred to their program. And we have a pretty long-standing relationship with Youth Build. Youth Build has been running the summer jobs program for several years. Hopefully that partnership will continue as they have really built up their program and they have a strong program in the community. Secondly, as Judge Costigan spoke, we have currently a Bureau of Justice Assistance grant called the Comprehensive Assessment Team in McLean County. That grant was awarded in September of 2019, and the main purpose of that is to address mental health and substance abuse issues or co-occurring issues with juveniles. So we are actually looking at extending that grant for an additional year. We are in the process of writing that no-cost extension right now, so we should know probably by August if we are awarded an additional year. If we are awarded the additional year, that will run through September 30th of 2024. So our thought process right now with that grant is there is a current component in the budget for mentoring, but we've decided with some of the remaining funds that we are going to increase that budget, and then we are going to form a partnership with Andre Hersey, who is the director of the Jewel Foundation, who Judge Costigan spoke about. He has been in front of the CJCC, I think, a couple of years ago. He has a very strong mentoring program here in McLean County. He has worked with a few of our youth so far. When Judge Costigan came on the bench, I think he's referred a couple youth to Andre's program. As I said, he has a pretty strong mentoring program already established. He does a lot of out-of-state visits to HBCUs. He also has a partnership with the Usher and Steve Harvey Foundation. So those youth work directly with those foundations, and I think actually this week they are at Usher's Summit, so having a chance to meet him and do some things, I think, in Atlanta. So that's where we're looking at with that grant. Like I said, we will be at the end of the grant in 2024 though, because we will be on our second no-cost extension, and there just will not be another extension available on that grant. In theory, it would be great at some point if we could sustain it in the community and it could be picked up. A main portion of that grant is offering RAP services to juveniles. And basically, I don't know if everybody's familiar with what RAPs are, but it's the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And so all stakeholders from the community, many different social service agencies are part of that. And that process just wraps services, and really the minor and their family are the decision makers and what will really work for them to change behavior and what their needs are. So beyond that, I can give a little brief update on emerging adult too. So emerging adult probation was established in McLean County in 2019. So we do cater to the specific needs of 18 to 25-year-olds. We are doing, tailoring our probation services a little bit differently than we do with traditional adult probation clients. Probably meeting the needs of that population a lot more similar to what we do with our juvenile probation clients. We have had some transitions through that program, some turnover in staff. Also, we went through the pandemic, which kind of threw a wrench in what we were trying to do to establish it. But we are up and running. Things are going well with that. We did actually, in May of this year, go up to Cook County to observe their young adult court in Avondale. And so that was an interesting experience, how they run court up there for that specific population. So we are working with the community on that population because there's just a lot of concerns in most of the social service community on how needs are met in that population, because once you turn 18, you're an adult in all of these systems, but really looking outside the box on how do we tailor services for the 18 to 25-year-old population, because it's so unique. The brain development, the trauma, all of that really comes into play with that population. So treating them like an actual 50-year-old adult at 18 just does not fit. So.
Questions for Suzanne? And I foresee law enforcement having a good insight in terms of potential mentors. While we will hopefully start with the Jewel Foundation in terms of looking to them, but if law enforcement knows of some people that might be in the area to where we're now looking, please let us know, and we can have folks reach out to them to potentially step in and help us there. So that's about all we have on that topic. We do have a couple of specialty courts, drug court, recovery court, veterans court here in McLean County. We're looking to potentially develop another one, family treatment court. Judge Foley's kind of starting to spearhead that, but I think Will might have an update on that.
Good afternoon. Yes, the Family Treatment Court is centered on a population of adult parents who are currently involved in the juvenile abuse and neglect court. It's not necessarily geared toward the children that they have. In Illinois, there aren't any existing family treatment courts, but there are longstanding family treatment courts in Indiana and Iowa, and we've conducted site visits with a couple locations in both those states, and we're currently in the process of pursuing an implementation grant beginning October 1 with the state administrative office to start maybe not the first one in Illinois, but to be the first operating one at the current time. Judge Brian Goldrick with the Juvenile Abuse Court, he will be the supervising judge with Judge Foley as kind of the mentor, as a longtime mental health treatment court judge. This will be a small population of persons who are involved in the juvenile abuse court, and they'll be offered mental health counseling services, substance abuse services, and some other parenting services to try to reunite them with their children earlier in the process, and ultimately not see them again in the JA court system. Some of these parents will have co-occurring criminal cases, and we still need to work through the process of what impact this court will have with those criminal cases, but it's focused on that population. So we're talking about 20 or 10 to 20 cases, or 20 to 40 parents being involved in this process. It's going to be voluntary, not mandatory, so we will be kind of in a development stage. If we're successful, we're going to look at some data collection efforts through the next year and the next 3 years, and then try to model this program for the rest of the state of Illinois. But again, there were existing family treatment courts, or a few in Illinois. They've all subsequently evaporated for one reason or another, so we are going to try to start this again in Illinois on kind of a different basis. So,
Questions on the family
Questions?
court?
I got a quick one for you. So we had assisted on a potential implementation grant for the family treatment courts that fell through whatever reason. It sounds like maybe you identified another one, and I'm just curious.
The administrative office has reached out to us,
Okay.
and their grant process is relatively simplified.
Okay, good.
We may be the only people asking for this money, so that's how simple it's going to be, but we still need to just walk through some steps to secure it, but it's not a very complicated grant process. Mr. McCall had indicated we were pursuing a federal grant. One of the biggest problems we had recognized late in the grant process is they wanted the community partners to really fully identify what services they were going to offer, how they fit into the programming goals. A very extensive response from each of the service partners, and we were, within days of having to submit the grant, and we weren't just going to be able to meet those requirements in a timely manner. So we asked him and his office to suspend their efforts, but that grant is going to be available to us next year, because that grant we're eligible if the program's been in operation less than a year, which will be eligible next year.
Thanks for clarifying. And if we could still assist in
No,
that, just let me know.
we'll start much earlier in the process, and a little more with our eyes open as to what they're asking for us this time. Those of you used to a federal grant, usually the partners have to write a letter of support that they're participating. This was much more extensive than that. So, thank you.
Will, I don't see Craig here, or Cassie, case management system, do you just want to give a quick update on that?
Yes, for those of you who are not aware, McLean County is redoing all their case management system programming that includes jail management, the system that the law enforcement agencies use, and then the system of case management in this building for court services, the state's attorney, public defender, circuit clerk, and the court. Those are essentially in three components: law enforcement, jail management, and the case management system, I'll refer to it as. We're very close to determining an implementation date for the jail management and the law enforcement data management systems. Case management's going to extend much longer, well into 2024 and early 25. We're currently today in a case management development system site visit with the vendor for the circuit clerk's office down Everhart and with the circuit court, and there are staff from both offices attending that. But we, Sheriff, I just ask the implementation dates for the law enforcement system.
I think there might be a go-live date in September, but what that actually means.
Yeah. So sometime in the last quarter of the year, and then the jail management system will come on in 2024 or toward the end of the year. The jail management system will also be incorporate the juvenile detention center. So we'll get good data going forward, and Frank Beck's very happy with good consistent data from the juvenile detention center. And so that will be helpful. But yeah, that's an ongoing effort, and we'll repeat ourselves about 6 more quarters. And then in March, when I tell you in April of 25, we're going to implement, I'll be much grayer, older, beaten down, but it'll be done. So.
Questions on case management? Councilman Becker does have an update for us. I think the city of Wilmington's undertaking some research with regard to gun violence, and I asked him just to give a brief update on that in terms of where that was at, so we can see if we can help them out with anything that they may be doing.
So the committee was approved 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, something like that. It's going to take a while for that committee to be formed. They did repurpose it. Initially, it was focused purely on Councilmember Ward's initiative around gun violence. Now it's been kind of refocused a little bit just around general safety. To be honest, I think that was a naming and a positioning thing for political reasons rather than anything else. But the vast majority, my personal opinion, which I stated in the council, was the vast majority of what I think they want to do is being done by this group and being worked by this group, and that's why our numbers are lower already than some of the surrounding counties, because we're already working a lot of this. But I do think I've encouraged them to get involved and work in conjunction with this group, and I think we're going to be able to get, when we get that group in place, which I hope is this fall, probably October, November would be my guess at the earliest, that we will bring some data requirements maybe that you could help us with, Frank, to try and understand what's going on around gun violence, and then see where they go. But I think they should work with this group rather than separately, because I think it'll just be a duplication of effort.
So happy to hear more and see if there's something that's in the data we have that can answer those questions. I think there's also there's data people within the police department and there's information there that the county doesn't necessarily have, and so maybe there's ways to work that together.
There's two things that have been the push of the folks that wanted to form this, and that is obviously a reduction in gun violence. What can we do to reduce down to zero? I mean, that's their focus. But also the idea that, suicide by gun is not considered a crime, and it's missed in a lot of the statistics. So they're very focused on getting the mental illness piece of the statistics accurate, because they do believe that our numbers for gun violence around here are skewed low because we don't count those kind of things. Again, that's not my personal opinion, but that's what we're pushing forward right now. And I do think if we work together, it'll be much more productive.
I think if you want to let them know, we'll be glad to help them anyway, and if they have information that'll help us.
Yes.
That would be great. So, any questions on the City of Wilmington study? Okay, well that's the PFA I've already covered. I really don't have any more than that. At our next meeting, I'll be able to let you know how things are going. We were scheduled for 18th, but apparently that is the Behavioral Health Forum that day, and so we will reschedule the full meeting on this, and Will can let you know when that's going to be.
I'd like to look at the following week, Thursday, the 26th, so if anyone has some immediate knowledge of a conflict with that date, I gotta go look at a couple different calendars, but we'll send it out in a couple days, but we'd like to look at October 26th. One of the things we'd like at that is, and I'm glad the chief is here, I will be asking Jack McLean if he's available to give us an update on gun possession, gun violence in the community.
Erica, anything from your office in terms of updates? No. Judge Yoder, anything from the criminal division in terms of updates? Not really. Okay. Anything else from anybody? Sheriff? Don?
Please save the date for the forum. There's continuing ed credits that are available for those who have training standards that they need to meet. And they're extended.
Yeah, Cassie's doing my job for me right now. We'll have about 30 different speakers there. It's going to be at ISU this year, which is different in past where it was at the Marriott. We'll actually have a bigger venue than we did before because we're renting basically all of the rooms over there. Like I said, about 30 different speakers across 4 different topic categories. We'll have information about CEUs coming out pretty soon, but we're hoping to have a lot more than we have in the past years. So I can never remember the name for them, but the legal ones, will have some of those available for you in the room that are interested in those. But social workers, nurses, teachers, we're trying to have a whole gamut of them this year. And so we're hoping that we'll have a record attendance. So please come the 19th. Sorry, Will. But thank you to everyone else, and hopefully you can attend.
Great, thank you. CLE, by the way.
CLE, yes. I'll write that down.
Yes.
This is our first time at the meeting. I'm Michelle Cope, and this is
Colleen Shaw.
from the
Thank you.
Wilmington Public Library. We're also on the McLean County Reentry Council Board. We brought flyers that will help you with that. We meet monthly. Tomorrow is a meeting. We would like to share with you the QR code on our one-pager that we brought that would allow you to come to that. We'd love to see you there. We'll be hearing from Sergeant Maurer at our meeting about dealing with police. So you may know all of that. So, but also from the library's perspective, all Unit 5 and District 87 students have library cards that they can access. 17-year-olds are considered adults. They can get their own cards. We have education and job help through the library website with live chats. They can enter a math problem and someone will help them with the math. A professional, not a librarian, somebody who knows what they're doing, or upload a paper and help them with that. If they're not intent on an education, furthering their education, we have GED, different testing practices and practices for other path ways that they would like to take. We have Wi-Fi 24/7 on our parking lot. They don't have to even enter the building, and it's open, and they can use that anytime that they would like to complete anything that they need to. And then we work with the jail right now to get library cards to anyone that might need them coming out of the system. And we donate books to the jail for their library. And then we're hoping in the future to get classes into the jail for those people that can then continue when they come out through the library. And if there's anything that we could connect with you on any of your efforts, we would love to help.
Thank you, that's good information to have. Question, do you work with Jason Tabb out at the JDC at all?
We don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not yet?
Not yet, okay.
We'd be happy to.
Not yet, all right,
Yeah.
well, that's, because I know we were looking for some book donations, that type of thing.
Oh, we'd love to.
Out there, but we can talk further, thank you. Anybody else?
I'm just gonna segue on to what they had, because one of the things, and it almost applies to what Nick was saying too. In the Mental Health Action Plan, it has, one of the goals is to have the Reentry Council working with CJCC.
Yes.
So I think that there's some collaboration that can go on now that they come here. And it, like I said, it also kind of somewhat applies to what Nick was saying too, on the collaboration part of different groups that are existing out in the community, but kind of operating in their own little silos,
Right.
but, so I think that this is a good group to be able to pull some of those things together, because they're all kind of related.
So the reentry program deals with reentry from IDOC, is that what we're talking about here?
We're really dealing with families, anyone coming out of incarceration. It can be from the jail, from.
They're coming home to McLean County.
Yeah, if they're
So it could be
So those people that
IDC.
were sentenced out of McLean County, not out of Cook County or Grundy County or
If
anywhere
they're
else?
coming to Bloomington, we want to have them.
Does IDOC place them, or do they?
We
cycle
usually
them over?
know, they usually know where they're going. And so that they can work with them on housing, getting food, things like that started, as they leave. And so, they know kind of where they're going and where they're being sent. They're often given, rides to where they're going, and then we will move them any way they want to.
Thank you.
Other questions? Anything else? Will?
I just need I need that flyer and QR code so I can
Yeah.
Absolutely.
put it together.
Anybody else?
May I ask a couple
You
brief
bet.
questions about the Safety Act?
You bet. Do you want to do it in front of the entire group, or you want to just talk to me about it?
Well, you got two judges here, so it might be useful to
Okay,
have
we'll
both.
talk to you afterwards. How about
Okay,
that?
that's fine.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else for the good of the group? Okay, thank you all.